This week, Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani is expected to make a handful of appointments to his incoming administration. While his transition team is still assessing candidates for some of the top positions, they're also considering keeping on current senior officials who were tapped by Mayor Adams. That includes my next guest. Melissa Aviles-Ramos wants to keep her job leading the nation's largest public school system. Who wouldn't want that job? She took over as school's chancellor at the beginning of this year and has an extensive background in education, taking on many roles from superintendent to principal, and was in fact a teacher as well. School's Chancellor Melissa Aviles-Ramos joins us now to talk about all of this. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Thank you. Great to see you.
My understanding is you've met with the mayor-elect to talk about the future of the school system. How did the discussion go, and are your visions of where the school system should go aligned?
We had a great conversation about all things education. So from safety to raising achievement scores and proficiency levels in math and reading, to talking about really important topics like Every Child and Family is Known, an initiative that we launched earlier this year to support students in temporary housing and ensure that that connectivity is there for families and city resources. And so I was thrilled to know that he was in favor of that expansion. So we discussed a lot.
Okay. Now, one of the things that is striking about this, we covered the campaign extensively. He's talked about universal child care. I imagine that would have to involve the school system as far as even just training caregivers and teachers and creating the right connection when some kids from early education make it up to pre-K and kindergarten and so forth. Are you involved in those kind of discussions?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought it up, because we talk a lot about daycare versus early childhood education. And my Deputy Chancellor, Simone Hawkins, she has really been talking about the difference. And we want to make sure that we are supporting our CBOs, our caregivers, so that they are more than just babysitters. They are educators, and they are priming our young people for academic excellence as early as birth, right? And so they need that support. They're hungry to do that work. They're already doing that work. And so thinking about ways that we can further support that is always exciting for us.
You've got so many different stakeholders that you're answering to. How often do you meet with Mayor Adams?
Well, I meet with Mayor Adams frequently and on an as-needed basis, and his lines of communication are quite open, and so he'll call me and tell me something's on my mind about when it comes to education and what say you, and we have a lot of productive conversations around many topics. Now,
one reason I ask that is that I've noticed in talking with educators that some of the things that we put in the headlines around gifted and talented programs or the specialized high schools are actually a relatively small part of the job, or actually a relatively small percentage even of the student body. But that when I talk to real educators, their central challenge I keep hearing about is, how do we close the achievement gap? How do we make sure that Black and brown kids, that all kids are reading at grade level early on, by like third grade? How is that portion of your job going, and are there any strategies you're especially excited about?
I'm really excited about the opportunity to bring my background as a teacher and a principal into this role. As you mentioned, I think a lot of the job, we focus on the political aspect of it, but in the end, I'm a super teacher and a former principal, and I get to go into classrooms and have conversations with teachers and principals about pedagogy and curriculum and instruction and the implementation of New York City Reads and New York City Solves. Something I did as soon as I was announced, I went to visit a campus where New York City Solves was not doing so well. And I met with chapter leaders from the UFT, and I met with teachers, and we made adjustments on pacing and modification, and that's the kind of work that needs to happen with any chancellor in the seat. And so what we're really addressing is an opportunity gap, not an achievement gap. Because as the scores indicated, when teachers and students are given the right resources, then we see those test scores go up. Namely, our Black and brown students, our Black children, showed more growth than any other student population, and our Latinx students were right behind. And so even though less than 50% of them are still reading and doing math at proficient levels, they showed the most gains in one particular year.
And what made that happen?
Well, a number of things. One is New York City Reads and Solves standardized curricula across the districts. And so New York City Reads, this was the second year, and we made sure that every single K-5 school was doing one of 3 curricula. And so we were able to go in and give targeted professional learning, which was more shoulder-to-shoulder job-embedded support, as opposed to someone talking at you in the front of the room and telling you what teaching looks like. They were actually modeling. And it's very easy for us from Central to insert ourselves and support at the intervention level when everyone's doing one of the same 3 curricula.
Interesting. The state's class size law requires smaller class sizes, and I think for the upcoming year, 20 to 25 students in 80% of all classrooms. Are we on track to reach that?
You know, we are working hard every single day with our union partners and with advocates to meet that mark. We obviously were in compliance this past year, and yes, some exemptions were a part of meeting that compliance. Most recently, I committed to reopening the working group on class size, because there are always some ways that we can always address it, and some people called for a pause. I did not think that we needed to call for a pause when we could simply continue with being compliant with the law and still have a shared agenda around prospective changes that can be amended to the law. And so I voiced that, and I think doing that work in advance of a legislative session in Albany gives us an opportunity to make suggested changes.
Shale Polikow-Saransky, the president of Bank Street College, former deputy chancellor,
Yes.
he has floated the idea of full-year apprenticeships for junior teachers so that there'd be 2 instructors in almost every classroom. Is that a good idea, do you think?
It's a great idea. And actually, prior to his amazing op-ed, I sat on a panel with him where he discussed that. And I jumped in emphatically saying, yes, this would be amazing. You know, New York City Teaching Fellows and Teach for America are 2 opportunities where people can actually start teaching while they're learning how to teach and getting their credentials. And it's been met with some criticism. I was a New York City Teaching Fellow. I turned out okay. And yet the traditional route, while of course we appreciate teachers going in through the traditional route, many people cannot afford to take an unpaid internship, right? And so this is a phenomenal idea, especially if we're thinking about growing our own, which is something that Mayor-elect Mamdani has talked about, and I'm excited to explore that.
There are a number of students in the public system that have been targeted by federal immigration authorities. Has it been disruptive? How are you managing that?
Well, I continue to do the work of Project Open Arms, which I launched myself in 2022, and I'm so proud of the team, the work that they've continued. But really, the secret to our success is making sure that we stay connected with families, with advocates, with elected officials. New York Immigration Coalition has been a phenomenal support to us. Project Rousseau, La Victoria, these are organizations that help us connect representation with families, help us to help the families navigate certain situations. Of course, there is fear, and that is something that we cannot downplay. It is a real thing. And so working with our families to assure them that schools are safe spaces is really critical in this moment.
And how is the cell phone ban going? Locking up cell phones?
It's going well, just like we thought it would. Over 50% of our schools were already restricting cell phone use in some way. What was important to me is that we did not have a one-size-fits-all approach. When we're mandating across the system like New York City public schools, you know, it's different flavors and spaces all over the place.
What works best? Because I keep hearing, you know, there's like the pouch that you take from them, or there's
it depends
you put it
on
in
the
locker.
school. So there are some schools, like when I was a principal, I had a school of only 380 kids. So I collected cell phones. But one time I had to evacuate and I had to give 380 cell phones back to kids, and that could be challenging. Now imagine that in a school of 3,000, 4,000 kids. So for some it's the pouch, for some it's collecting and putting them in lockers. It just depends on the school.
Okay, very good. Before I let you go, what one thing do you want people to remember? I mean, you've had basically a solid year now as chancellor.
Yes, I started in October. I want people to remember that I am first and foremost a parent in the system, and so for me it was important to be the advocate for parents, having my own experience as a parent in New York City Public Schools.
Is that a first? I don't remember any chancellor.
I don't know. I don't quote any first, but I know my kid is in middle school and she's with me right now.
Okay, very good. Thanks so much. Best of luck with the remainder of the year.